We're doing this underwater?
Okay. So we are live on YouTube.
All right, well, welcome to all those Insomniac YouTubers who have stumbled on to the meeting of the PHC Committee of Marion County. We have, do we have we gotten Terry yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Mr. Doucette, anything you want to start us off with?
So today's agenda is fairly lengthy. Brian Bailey and Jill Adams are going to walk you through some rate setting considerations. We additionally have a GIS proposal from Lex Winans that is beyond an amount that I can approve. So I think those are the real highlights. Annette, have I missed anything?
So in my last email, which I just sent out before I walked down here, Health Department has 5 resolutions that they want to take to the full board this next week. Because of the way October falls though, the Board of Health meeting's not until tomorrow. And so they really have to go before Board of Health, which before they would normally come to PHSC, but I just thought I'd get them to you guys. I would list what they're about on the agenda just so you can take a look at them and make a decision. I mean, if you wanted to have another meeting next week prior to them going to the full board, we could do that, but because there wasn't one planned, I just wanted you to be able to take a look at them.
Okay, thank you. I'm obviously going to attend the Board of Health meeting tomorrow where they will discuss those resolutions in detail. Now, would it be acceptable for us as PHC to review those, discuss them over email, and then hopefully agree to them and push them to the full board for a week, so that like the 15th of October? Can we do it that way, Annette?
Yeah, that's totally okay. I just didn't want to assume that that's the way you would do it. So once we get the Board of Health sign off on those, and I can tell you that the Health Department actually sort of worked with John DeWayne on them prior to me getting them, which is a process that we're working out. But so I know he's been very involved in the agreements. There are a few contracts associated with these resolutions, but he's been, right involved in all of those. And we would make sure, of course, that they all had his go ahead on them before you would get them. But yeah, I could certainly send them to you afterwards and do the, reply individually and do it that way.
All right, very good. Excuse me. Still have my lunch here. While we're waiting for Terry.
She's
Jill-
actually on.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Good. Oh, there you are. Nice smile.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Annette, are you going to lead us through the agenda?
I am. So let's do a roll call here if we could, and then it looks like the parks discussion is right at the forefront there. So Commissioner Belrath?
Here.
Commissioner Chickering?
Here.
Commissioner Freeling?
Here.
All present.
Very good.
So I want to let you go ahead, Bill, and lead how you want to have that discussion. I know you have several parts of that parks piece, so.
Great. Well, I think the most immediate one is Resolution 0331, which we tabled at the last meeting so that we could get some additional information from Brian Bailey on the background of the increase. I think before we do that, Brian and Brian Doucette may be able to help us, and Annette, you too, probably. A question has come up about process. And I don't think my time on the Parks Board, I've ever heard this discussed. But the question is, if the Board of Parks, the Parks Commission, has not officially approved for example, the increase in parking rates through its own normal motion, roll call, et cetera, which is the way they normally do it. Is PHSC even authorized to deal with this subject at this time? Meaning it has to go back to the park board at a board meeting to approve it before we can approve it. Or, as I understood things, this is the alternative, that the Parks Board is an advisory board only to the Board of Commissioners, and that their actions are routinely solicited, but there be a formal motion, second resolution vote by the Parks Board before we at PHSC can deal with an issue. So that was a very long, legally sufficient, wordy memo kind of question, Brian. What do you think?
So this is Brian Doucette. I think it's a good question. I think that in a normal year, having the Parks Commission meet and as part of a public discussion, offer their input on rate setting is absolutely best practices. I do not believe that you're required to do that. Further, I don't believe that you're bound to accept their recommendations. With that said, as we have navigated the COVID waters from the spring into the summer, several of the advisory boards and to some degree, even members on the Board of Commission have been consulted via email. We've tried to float concepts out to see if there is general consensus as we attempted to engage the various committees, the various advisory committees. Just in the last 2 months, we've really been pushing the use of Zoom out to the various committees. Brian Bailey and his team did work to get consensus from the members of the Parks Commission. And I believe, and I'm not going to speak for Brian, but I believe that he did get the majority to offer their input on the proposed rate setting. For today, it made complete sense to table the rate setting to allow the parent committee to offer input prior to bringing it to the full board. Now, I guess I would ask that Brian Bailey, if you could chime in with your process to gauge the thoughts of your board. Is that something you can describe?
Yeah, basically what both you and Commissioner Chickering outlined there are the protocols. The Parks Commission is an advisory board to the Board of Commissioners. The Parks Commission typically, as we go through the budget process, Parks staff would review fees, make any recommendations to the Parks Commission, and those recommendations would then move forward to PHSC and the Board of Commissioners for final approval or no change at all. So the way it was handled this previous time was the fees were sent to the Parks Commission about a week before a scheduled meeting in August. We heard back from several commissioners of a thumbs up, yes, proceed. We heard no negative comments or no lack of support for the fees from any of the Parks Commission. The August meeting was canceled and the September meeting proceeded without the fee discussion because I assumed that we had authorization from the Parks Commission to move forward to PHSC and then to the board for the final approval.
Can you guys still hear me? My
I
system is
lost.
taking over. Okay, there we're back. I got some proxies thing going. So bottom line, and Terry, I know you had the exact same question, which was an excellent one last week. Have you got questions about where we're at process wise?
No, I think that by us tabling it, it gave us the opportunity to sort of tap the brakes a little bit and have the conversation that we're having today. I think it's one that is part of a bigger conversation, and I'm thankful that we're having the opportunity to have it. With regards to the process, obviously, like our administrator said, in a perfect world, having concurrence verbally from action made by the advisory board would be really helpful in our discussion, but definitely the way that our policies are set up, it really needs to come through the parent committee, then go to the full board, which is what we're doing today.
So you're okay with us proceeding with the discussion at this point?
Yes.
Okay, great. Dave, do you have questions on that?
I don't have any questions. I ready to move forward talking about it if we need to.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. We got the process part done. That's usually very difficult. So Brian Bailey, why don't you give us a little bit of background? I think we've all had a chance to read your materials, but I'd like you to present the thinking of the Parks Group, and we can talk about the increase request.
Sure. As was stated, during the budget process, we review fees and would make any recommendations to raise or lower fees to the Parks Commission, which would eventually end up to the Board of Commissioners. At this time, as we looked at fees at all parks, it is recommended that at Silver Beach County Park, the resident fee for daily entrance in the park, which has not been affected since 2005, when it went from $5 to $6 for the 2006 season, that would go to $8, and that the non-resident fee would then increase from $12 to $15. The resolution also states that at Silver Beach County Park, where annual passes are purchased, and at the Berrien County Administration Center here, where annual passes are purchased, that annual pass fee would be $40, and it would remain $35 at Love Creek and Madeline Bertrand.
So there are two moving pieces there. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Let's deal with the parking increase. Let's deal with the parking increase first then. Terry, got thinking on going from where we're at to $8.15? I think you had some Waco Dunes comparisons that made us look like we're not going far enough.
Well, I did a little bit of research with regards to what we have around where we're at. And Waco Beach charges a flat rate of $10 a day. I think most of the other beaches in our area do just that. I'm looking for those notes. Give me just a half a moment on that one. Here they are. New Buffalo charges $5 for the first 3 hours, $12 for all day. And it didn't necessarily matter whether you're resident or non-resident, right? Looking at the increase, I think the only reservation that I have is the resident parking fee, which leads to the bigger part of the discussion that I think we've had over the course of the last year, which has been the idea of asking for the parks millage increase. And what this millage really was when it was first initiated was to kind of keep the costs down to the residents, to kind of take a little bit of the sting out that we wouldn't increase that daily parking fee. So I think that that's the only thing that I had reservation on with regards to the daily parking fee is the resident versus non-resident. I think Brian has spoke to us a number of times on the appetite that we have for residents coming to Silver Beach, and that the increase in our entry fee is not necessarily deflected those interested parties away from our park beach down there, which is a testament to how great it is. But I just want us to proceed with caution and with the best intentions all around. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it tells you where my thinking is a little bit from the resident perspective.
Sure, sure. Brian, could you clarify for all of us the requirement of the ratio resident to non-resident? There's some kind of a mandate because we're part of the state or the state. What's that all about?
Commissioner, when we accepted grant funding from the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, those contracts state that we cannot charge more than double to the non-residents of what we charge a resident rate. So right now, Silver Beach is at $6 per vehicle and $12 for non-resident vehicle. So as staff looked at our budget, we said, you know, it hasn't been raised since 2005 when it came into effect, the 2006 season. And it looked appropriate from a staff point of view to raise that fee from $6 to $8. And that coincided with raising the non-resident fee from $12 to $15. And that's totally acceptable with our grant contracts, basically, that we have in place.
So in reality, based on the contract we have, we could have taken the non-resident rate to $16.
We certainly could have, and that's a viable option that you could look at. As far as from a managerial and staffing standpoint, on average, we bring in about 35 to 40,000 non-resident vehicles into Silver Beach. But it is easier to make change on the cars when we're dealing with a $5 difference between versus $16, if that makes sense, Bill.
You had me all the way on that one, Brian. Thank you. I appreciate it. I just wanted everybody to understand that under this ratio, we actually could have gone higher, but chose not to for a very practical reason, as you said. So thank you. Thank you. Dave, you got a view on this?
Not a lot. I know we've talked about it the 2-3 years I've been on the committee. We've talked about it each year. It comes up with Brian, and I know the concern has always been pricing ourselves out of still being attractive enough to want to go. I don't see these prices, you know, harming that at all.
Okay.
So I have no problem with it.
Chairman
Right.
Chickering.
Yes, sir.
So this is Brian Desette. So I went through this with my prior employer. We would do annual rate setting for South Haven has 7 public bathing beaches, and 2 are really the main beaches, the North Beach, South Beach. And every year we would take a look up and down the coast from New Buffalo all the way up towards Traverse City. And almost every year we would do the rate comparison, and I always was taking a look at Silver Beach. And what I can tell you is that it was almost comical from you know, from the municipal manager perspective, because it was almost like everyone was feeling each other out. One community would set rates, and then the others invariably would end up having either 3 months or 6 months down the road a rate setting that would almost mirror what occurred. So in South Haven, they're currently at $10 per day, and I would anticipate that leadership there is now looking at an adjustment to cover the cost of playground upgrades, beach cleaning, and combating high water. I can tell you that the rate setting that Brian and Jill have brought you, I think makes sense. And honestly, I won't be a bit surprised if you see similar changes up and down the lake shore. With that said, I've walked the beach with Brian and with Jill, and I can tell you that I think from a shoreline erosion perspective, there's very legitimate costs that are coming, and then also from a playground and other capital improvement perspective, I think there's definitely justification.
Good. Thank you. Okay, so are you, I guess, Terry, you may or may not still have questions. Are you okay with the increase such that we should move this to the full board?
So once our park director refreshed my memory from our earlier discussion on the fee increase, because I think we had this discussion back in 2017 when we increased for non-resident. And I remember Brian mentioning about the need to keep that ratio set so that it was no greater than, 50 or double the rate of what we have for residents. So I'm okay with moving that forward. For the parks fee, are we going to talk about the annual fee?
That's next.
And okay,
All right. So
it's all on the same.
it's all on the
Go
same.
ahead.
resolution. Yes, it is. So thank you. Okay. So we got over hurdle number one. I think that's good. Thank you, Brian's, for your good work on that. The annual fee, the increase in the annual fee is what for? Tell me again, Brian, on that, on the annual.
The annual fee is $35, Commissioner, and the fee proposal is that it would go from $35 to $40.
Okay.
A $5 increase, and that would be for Silver Beach only, but you could also purchase the pass for $35 at Madeleine Bertrand or at Love Creek. Those two regional parks do not get the attendance that Silver Beach does receive, and the concept was that maybe people would want to go to those parks to purchase their annual pass for the $5 savings. Those parks are also different in their entry fees. The entry fees into those parks are $3 for resident vehicles and $5 for non-resident vehicles. And those are recommended, those fees stay constant. The demand is at Silver Beach County Park, and we've raised the non-resident fees twice in the last 6 years, and we saw no decrease in non-resident attendance. In fact, we've seen increases in non-resident attendance.
Okay. So to be completely accurate about it, the cost of the annual park pass is purchase location specific. If you choose to buy it at Mad Burt or Love Creek, you're going to pay $35, but that exact same pass with the exact same set of rights, if you choose to buy it at Silver Beach, is $40.
That is correct.
So it's a point of purchase issue. How are you going to communicate that? I mean,
I'm sorry?
that's downright confusing to me anyway.
How are you going to communicate it, Brian, the change?
Well, we can use our social media outlets of Facebook and Instagram, and if the customer asks, we can inform them at Silver Beach Gatehouse.
But they're already there wanting to buy.
Correct.
You think they're going to turn around and go to Berrien Springs, save $5?
No, but if we do increase the annual pass to $40 at the inland parks, we may lose some customers, because for a county resident to purchase a $3 day pass, the annual pass right now is $35. If we increase it to $40, they do have to attend the park a number of times to start making a qualified decision on the purchase.
No, excellent point. And I think that's, in my mind anyway, the best point on this. Does Brian Doucette, does the county have an issue with charging one fee based on where you purchase something versus another place you buy it? Almost sounds like an equal protection violation or something.
So I hadn't thought of it in that way. I can tell you that trying to drive traffic to the county's underutilized parks seems like a reasonable idea. I think that, you know, from a municipal rate setting perspective, you've got quite a bit of freedom to set your rates as you please. But, you know, to back up, do we have the legal authority to do this? That's a question that I can engage corporate counsel on prior to bringing it to the full board for consideration. But
Yeah, I don't need another 15-page legal memo.
okay,
I know you don't either.
no.
Oh, well, you know, I think Brian has in fact, I think, articulated a reason for the distinction. And that being, we don't want to lose customers who don't use Silver Beach, for them to actually have to maybe pay a premium because Silver Beach is on their ticket that they don't use. So, Terry, how do you come in on this one?
You know, Bill, I had the same reservations that I think you were having of just the confusion. I think that our parks are definitely worth a $40 annual pass, whether you go to Silver Beach, Love Creek, Madeline Bertrand, any of the other ones. We have some spectacular parks. And so to our park director's point, though, you know, usership and finding that point of value in an annual pass versus daily entrance has some merit to it. So I'm comfortable with moving forward to push this to the full board for discussion, or, you know, I don't know if there's any other thoughts with regards to this.
Dave?
Yeah, I don't, you know, I was a little confused last week too, but listening to Brian's explanation last week and then again today, I have no problem with it if it helps bring more people over to Love Creek or Bertrand just to buy their parks pass for the year. I mean, that would, you know, that wouldn't normally go there if they're in that neighborhood anyway, if they can save $5. But I just know that every time I've ever gone to Silver Beach, there's a lot of times when I'm glad I'm not planning to stop there because they're always busy. And I've been to Bertrand, I've been to Love Creek and these other places, and I've never had a problem getting a place to park, just driving in. So, yeah, I think, you know, our best, you know, our number one, our showpiece park, so to speak, rates having a little bit more money coming into it, I guess, under those circumstances.
Well, I mean, the money's all going to go into one pot. It's just where you have to pay more for the same.
Well, yeah, it's not going to scare anybody away. I
No,
understand it.
You're absolutely right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
can I ask a question of Brian Bailey?
absolutely.
Because I vaguely remember when we did this discussion for the increase, that there was discussion even back then of keeping the other two parks at the lower rate and raising Silver Beach. Does my memory serve me correctly, or am I remembering that incorrect?
Commissioner, I don't understand the question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So when we discussed this with the increase for the annual fee the last time, I think it was going from 30 to 35. And the recommendation was to increase Silver Beach from 30 to 35 and keep the other ones at 30.
You know, I'd have to look back, Commissioner, because that $35 annual pass has been in effect since I've been the director in 2008, if I recall.
Yeah.
So I have to look back on when we did change that, Commissioner. I don't have the answer for you.
Okay. And my memory must be serving me wrong because it would have been a discussion we would have had while I served on the board.
Well, just on a side note, if I can, I mean, I've been here 19 years and I buy one of these every year for my husband for a Christmas present, and I believe it's always been 35 that I remember.
I'd have to look
Okay.
back, Commissioner.
Terry. Good. Terry, that's because you were 6 years old at the time.
Oh, goodness.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
so I think it's worth noting, we just took a quick look at the parking violation fee. If you were to park on a St. Joe City street next to Silver Beach to say inspect erosion control issues, the violation fee is $40 for the initial fee. So it's just worth noting. I have absolutely no objection to St. Joe fee structure. I just thought it would be relevant for this discussion.
It is, and I'm very glad you stand up for your commissioners who get those tickets. Thank you, sir.
Not a problem.
I think this is the second part of the Silver Beach resolution that it sounds like we're comfortable moving both aspects of it to the full board on Thursday morning. Am I correct in that?
I'm good.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. And I will try to articulate all of this discussion in less than three sentences. Okay.
Bill, would you like to have, I'm sorry, Commissioner Chickering, would you like me to have the PHSC report go prior to the consent calendar, which is where this would be voted on? Would you like me to move that up in the agenda for the board?
Yeah, that's probably, are you guys okay with that? That's probably a great way to get it cleared.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Great. Excellent. Thank you, Annette. That's a great idea. The next aspect, and we've got three other aspects of parks that are not emergencies, so to speak, but I think that given the way everything's going, there are important discussions that we need to start. And we've had some of them before, but I think it's important that we get these things rolling again. Just as they're listed in the agenda, I think JB Hoyt, who's a member of the Parks Commission, has sent through Brian Doucette, all of the commissioners, his analysis and recommendation that the Board of Commissioners revisit an idea that was actually on the table last fall, probably even a little before this time. So it's over a year old. And that proposal was to increase the park's millage for the purpose of providing extra funding to do some of these capital projects that are in dire need of attention. Things like playground at Silver Beach, the concession stand at Silver Beach. We got erosion control stuff now, but there were some others. Brian has his checklist of things that require funding above and beyond what our current resources provide us. And as I recall, the Parks Board approved a resolution to the Board of Commissioners, as I say, probably last August or September, recommending that the parks millage be increased by board action from 0.1 mils to 0.2 mils. And you recall, we have an authorized millage up to 2.25. So we would not be exhausting the park millage, but we would be doubling it. And there was communication of varying kinds back then. My recollection is that there were several members of the board that raised, the Board of Commissioners, that raised concerns about increasing taxes. And also we're a little concerned about how the Parks Board's money was being spent already. And I think one of the major concerns, kind of a mantra that several had at that time was, money for repairs and improvement is fine, but money to buy more property is not. And I don't remember who was on any side of that debate, but the entire concept that Mr. Hoyt is raising now was deferred by the Board of Commissioners at about the time of the budget hearings. And Dave, you, Terry, can help me with that. Am I okay with that so far?
Mhm.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Okay. Well, I guess the question to us as a threshold organization, as the parent organization, is what do we think we should do with Mr. Hoyt's suggestion and the renewal of the recommendation from the Parks Board on this millage increase? And
Maybe-
Brian Bailey, do you want to speak to that before we weigh in?
Commissioner, this was brought to you by Parks Commissioner. It was discussed last year, as you say, Commissioner Chickering, at the August meeting. And in August of 2019, the Parks Commission then supported the 0.20 increase from 0.10, and it moved forward in the process, and here we are a year later still discussing it. So your park staff did not bring up the millage concept at the September meeting. This was brought up by Parks Commissioner J.B. Hoyt. And J.B. Hoyt respectfully has brought you these materials and this information for you to make a decision on the parks millage.
Okay. Do you have a recommendation for us on this subject?
I know that you have facilities that are not in immediate intensive care, but we all know that they will be. And I look at Silver Beach County Park, and when I did the walkthrough with the reporter a week or 10 days ago for the article that was in the paper, he noticed things that I point out things to him that he doesn't notice. Is Silver Beach County Park not only a United States class facility, but a world class facility as it stands right now? No. We have the power to do that, to bring it back to what we want, and we know how to get there. It's just how do we get there?
And is this suggestion a critical part of that concept and plans that you just mentioned?
Well, I don't know what the temporary erosion control costs are going to come in at. I was in a meeting with the architects and engineers this morning, Commissioner. They are recommending some armor stone come into that area, which is, even as a temporary measure, is going to, my guess is hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to save that sidewalk and possibly save that road. We think we can work with our permitting partners and get something in before winter. But that is a critical emergency in my opinion. When we look at our other aging infrastructure around our parks, Commissioner Freeling asked for our capital improvement list, which we took out of our 5-year plan. I mean, we realized even on, I wouldn't call it minor, but an $80,000 painting project went into our 1839 courthouse this summer. We have kicked the can down the road on $40,000 worth of sidewalk work at the 1839 courthouse that has not and will not get done in the foreseeable future. There's a whole list of needs. But it's where the funding comes from. As far as for the land acquisitions, all of our acquisitions have been either 3/4 funded by the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund and the matching money coming from the parks budget, or it's been matched from the landowners. The most recent purchases we have going right now, the landowners are willing to work with us on the lengthy grant process, but they are not willing to contribute towards the purchase of the property. So the money is coming for the 63 acres at Paw Paw River. 3/4 of that purchase is coming from the trust fund. You have a proposal for 35 acres that adjoins Madeline Bertrand County Park. We don't know if we'll get that grant funded or not. Your staff has budgeted for 2021 that we will get the grant. We don't know if we will, but we have earmarked the $100,000 match to go towards the property.
But that's $100,000 that we would not have to use for improvements or replacement of playground equipment or anything like that.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's to purchase 35 acres that adjoins Madeline Bertrand County Park.
Right, right.
And we'll have, the trust fund will give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down in December. And then that moves forward to the legislative branch and the governor probably in April or May. And then we'll have another decision at that time to say, if they do recommend funding for us, we can certainly decline the funding.
Okay. All right. Well, let me start with Brian Doucette. This is one of those fun things you can walk into in your first few months on the job. What's your thinking, Brian?
We just put out budget guidance to all departments, including the courts, including the sheriff's department, health department, and everyone else, trying to bring budgets in at a level equivalent to 2019 spending. We're asking for significant concessions from all departments, recognizing that the state of the world right now is very rough for a lot of businesses and households. I think that any type of tax increase, that the board should be very cautious on what action is taken here. Don't take it lightly. I am absolutely a proponent for spending at the parks, but I would urge caution on the rollout of any type of new millage without active consideration. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it certainly does. All right, Dave, what do you think?
I think it would be best discussed in about a month. But I mean, if you were talking about raising a millage, now wouldn't be the absolutely best time, even to talk about it, I think. But like Brian said, it's going to be tough for our state for a couple of years. It's hard to, even if we could make raise it without getting approval, we're going to get a lot of negative feedback, I'm afraid.
Good comment. Terry?
So looking at this discussion, I concur with our administrator. It also leads me back to what we started our discussion with, and that's process. We have a presentation that we've received through our administrator that was presented by a member of an advisory board. And while I appreciate the effort that went into it, all of the insight, I think without the advisory board saying that that had their concurrence to move it forward to us for further discussion, it really comes back to process again. Then a couple of other items, we have just moved forward a resolution to increase entry fee prospectively for Silver Beach. And we also know that there's a ballot proposal that will be put to the voters with a change in the structure for these DNR grants and how they're utilized versus maintenance money to acquisition money. And I know that Brian has brought this to the commission's attention before of how hard it is when you have infrastructure that needs maintenance. And yet most of the monies through that fund are for purposes of acquisition. And so I really do think on this particular subject matter, it's worthwhile for us to, again, push the pause button on the discussion just because of the nature of affairs that we have going on.
Okay. Well, I think we have a unanimous feeling about this. Too many questions. Maybe other ways to attack the problems, which we will talk about in a minute. So I think it would be appropriate for, and Brian Doucette, Brian Bailey will weigh in, would it be appropriate for me as head of PHSC to get back with JB? Brian Doucette, is that really your role? Is that Brian Bailey's job? And not rejecting the idea, just saying it's not the right time. Good point.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I've got no issue if this group feels comfortable just telling me to follow up with him. I'll happily do so and just ask him that respectfully, let's just hit the pause button again and assess in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the road what our overall community looks like, what the tax value looks like, and then plot out a method for him to re-engage in the discussion.
I think that sounds like a great assumption of responsibility. Thank you.
Not a problem.
I didn't think it would be.
Nope.
So Brian Bailey, is that okay with you?
Certainly.
Great. Thank you. JB is passionate, and that's why he's a good member of the Parks Board. So,
Yeah.
yes, Dave.
No, I'm just saying that's good to have somebody that passionate, that's what they want. But like Brian said, September last year is a lot different than September this year,
Very true.
thinking about this discussion of things.
Okay, so Annette, I think the next thing you had on there was property purchases, but I think Brian just updated us on where we stood with the Pawpaw River acquisition, which is underway, and the request for the grant at Mad Bird. Is that right?
Yes, that was just, I think this had been pulled off of an email from that kind of floated between you guys, and so that's why that was on there.
Great, great. So that will be beyond Brian's excellent update on that. Well, that'll just be another issue that we keep track of, like JB Hoyt's thing. Now, another thing that has come up, and Brian Bailey, you've been very good to prompt us a couple times in different situations to think broadly about this public-private partnership, the 3P, except the Board of Health already uses 3P. So you're going to have to find something else to call it. But why don't you give us your thoughts, certainly as it relates to Silver Beach, so we can start our thinking, Mr. Bailey.
Sure. Commissioners, we've had and continue to have public-private partnerships. We have a concession stand, a food concession that is run by a private vendor. We have a kayak and stand-up paddleboard concession that is run by a private vendor. We have concerts at Silver Beach that are run by private marketing partners. So we have these partnerships established already. And the idea is that we look at finessing those partnerships more. I'd have to do a little bit more homework, but we remember in 2012 or 13, when we were working with Ann Reeds from Cafe Tosi at the concession stand, we needed some grant match money for improvements at Silver Beach. And working with her and working with both Pepsi and Coke, Pepsi came to us with a check for $50,000 for a 5-year exclusivity to be at Silver Beach, to sell their product at Silver Beach for a 5-year basis. I think we can look at continuing those partnerships and helping our local businesses at our regional facilities. And Silver Beach being the #1 attended facilities, the park would be high on the list, but we also have Paw River County Park, the Lee River County Park. All of our parks are strategically located around the county. And your staff is doing homework as far as how can we develop more public-private partnerships with possibly our microbrewers that are out there right next to, Paw River County Park has Arclight Brewery as a next door neighbor. Glen River County Park has Ghostlight Brewery as a next door neighbor. There are models out there of other parks around the country that are partnering with your private businesses in very successful ways. And something that we have to look at or should look at as an opportunity for an alternative funding source for your parks.
Okay. Well said. How do we move this discussion to the next level of, here are some potential ideas, here are some opportunities that we think we can pursue?
Oh, sorry. Okay, can you hear us?
Yes.
I think you cut out. Bill, was the last thing you said, what are some opportunities? Is that what you?
Yeah, basically, I mean, how do we start drilling down to come up with true actual opportunities for consideration?
Mr. Chair, can I jump in there?
Sure.
Okay, so I guess what I would ask this group is just give me a little bit of feedback on how creative you all are comfortable with us getting. If this group says that the idea of some type of essentially a beer garden is something that the group would be comfortable learning more about, what I would then do is sit down with the team, with Brian, with Jill. I'll pull in some other staff, and we'll put together some concepts on how we could go out and seek proposals, how we could control the use of the property, and then how we could ensure that we minimize complaints about intoxication or over serving, etc. If this group wants to hear more about that, we are certainly willing to work on coming up with essentially bid documents and overall concepts that we could bring to Parks Commission and PHSC for further consideration. Brian and I have spitballed some ideas. We believe that there could be a significant revenue stream that could be generated by this, but we also recognize that we work for elected leaders and we don't want to step on toes. If this is something you want more information, we can do that. But we also don't want to spend a bunch of time on something that this group just says, no, we're not ready to go there.
Good. It's well stated.
Commissioners, couple of things. We had a very successful event in October at Love Creek County Park. It was a bicycle event, a one-day event. Alcohol was served as far as beer was served, a couple of, I don't remember what they were, a fall brew and some other kind of brew. But for the Michiana Bike Coalition and the Berrien County Parks, I know Berrien County Parks received around $9,500 from that event. And now that money is being transferred into the purchase of new cross-country ski equipment, which has been on our capital list for a number of years. And that was one event. Silver Beach County Park has probably had over 150 events where alcohol has been served. And so we're just looking at what other opportunities are out there and how do we get creative and expand on those opportunities.
Mhm. Okay, that's fairly stated by both of you. Dave, you got any thoughts off the top?
Not too many. I mean, if somebody has ideas or brings ideas, I'd certainly look at them. I wouldn't want to undertake it myself, but I'm sure other people have some ideas that could work.
Okay, and in your mind, the fact that we've had a long-standing county policy against alcohol in county parks, that's something that's worth revisiting if it can be done in a safe and reasonable fashion?
Yeah, sure. That wouldn't bother me. I mean, if they can show us that it's, if other people are doing it safely and financially making out okay with it, then I would certainly look at it. Wouldn't have a problem. Alcohol wouldn't be a factor if you can show me that, we can make it work.
Sure. Okay. Terry, what do you think? You're a mother of two young residents. How do you feel?
So thinking about this from our prior discussions, if we can be creative and think outside of the box and not have to then take some sort of ask to the public for a millage increase, I think it's worth the conversation. My reservations with the discussion would lead to, of course, those businesses that we have surrounding our county parks to make sure that there's no harm to them. This should be an augmentation with whatever partnership we create, and we should never be taking away from the commerce that's happening around our county parks. So with those two caveats, I mean, it's worth the conversation to me.
Good, good. And that was a good point about our neighbors, because they've been very good to us and we wouldn't want to be not good to them. So very good. Thank you. Well,
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So I worked on 3 different outdoor license agreements allowing for alcohol service on public property in South Haven. We did agreements with Taste, with Black River Tavern, and Sukasa. Those are 3 restaurants, and they were all benefited by having outdoor service. We helped them through the Michigan Liquor Control Commission process, and then ultimately did license agreements allowing them to do it. And then a percentage of or a portion of their total revenues are then paid back to the city. In that case, it was a relatively small amount. We were really just trying to help some local businesses grow and succeed. For this one, as Brian and I have started chewing on this topic, last summer when things were a lot more normal, I took my kids to Wrigley Field, and I hadn't been to Wrigley since they did the major remodeling, and I kind of picked up my jaw. So the entryway into Wrigley is now surrounded by a splash pad with outdoor dining and outdoor beverage service. And it really kind of blew me away because it was kind of a neat commingling of adult activities with children's activities. And as I look at Silver Beach, I think that there's the potential for doing something similar, but it's going to be key that you don't do harm to established local businesses. You do everything possible to encourage local business to partner up with the county, and you do this with a heavy focus on ensuring that you're growing the overall budget of the parks. So we've got some ideas. I'll work with Brian. I'll work with Jill. I'll pull in some others, and we can kind of beat up some concepts and start talking with this group about how we could pull something together.
Good. I think that would be good forethinking for all of us to do, particularly if money's going to be tight. Otherwise, there's some good examples of how a private-public partnership can be wildly successful. One only has to look as far as Silver Beach Pizza to see how good management, good planning, and good product can lead to success for everybody. So I am glad to hear that we as a committee are enthused about the idea. We want to hear the ideas, and that you guys are going to take the bull by the horns and give us some things to think about. So go get them. Good enough for everybody on that?
Great.
Good. Now we can move on to Jill's presentation.
Did you have it? No.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Aren't you funny?
Actually, you have something very important to present. What's the address in Buchanan where we're all going Saturday morning?
It's 3200 Chamberlain Road.
Chamberlain Road. Very good. And we
Probably
start at 8 o'clock?
Yep, from 8 till noon. It's really busy at the beginning. Less busy towards the second half of the event, typically.
Okay,
Good to know.
good to know. Nothing like Buchanan at 7:30 in the morning. So, great. I know you're going to have a great event, and thank you for all your hard work. So, you guys had enough of us? You want to go back and do something productive this afternoon?
I think it's your key to go. You're good. Yay!
You're good to go. Thank you very much. We always like learning. Okay, I think we've got essentially one more item in that, and that's the GIS. Thank you, Brian. That's the GIS request. And we got the memo from Lex. And before we get into this, I think I ought to let Terry either weigh in as president of the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission, or take an abstention from this because she's president of the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. I'd really like your thoughts, Terry, but if you're not comfortable with having a foot in each camp on this issue, I fully understand.
Yeah, Bill, I was surprised when I was reviewing the materials because I was not aware of this ask. So I don't have a whole lot to weigh in on this. I don't know. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
My computer's doing weird things on my end. And so I guess for me, I'm gonna stand back and let the discussion proceed with the rest of the board committee members.
So you don't have any firsthand information about this project that John's got going?
Unfortunately, I do not.
Okay. Brian, do you have more than what Lex put in his memo?
I've looked at the website. I don't have a ton of background on this, and honestly, sir, my initial reaction was, hey, let's do everything we can to support the planning commission. And then I saw the number and it kind of blew me away when Lex told me that, we're well into the 40,000 range. So I think that this is so far beyond my ability to approve that it makes sense to kick it to PHSC. I think that if this group would feel more comfortable having leadership from the planning commission on the horn with you all, explaining more about the project, that could be of value. It is complete sticker shock. That's the reason that I'm struggling a little bit on this one.
Mhm. Understandable. Well, I too have to express the same. We do try to cooperate, but when, John's memo to Lex, or maybe it was how Lex characterized John's thoughts in his memo, it was like, well, it's not really a big project. We don't have much skin in the game, but if we can give them this stuff, it might help somebody someday. Well, okay. We like to help somebody someday, but for $43,000, it seems like we'd like to know how we're going to help them a lot right away.
Yeah.
So, Terry, if you and Dave, I know I want your thoughts as well, but if you guys are okay, maybe what we ought to do is ask Brian to go back to John. I don't even know if John knows the $43,000 figure. But get back to John and say that we would like a little more definitive information about how this is going to help the residents of Berrien County and in what ways. Is that fair? Dave?
I will weigh in. Yeah, I think that that's more than fair. In past, and this has nothing to do with this particular ask, but I know in the past when we've had any asks from our GIS department, it had to be with an organization that we had firsthand direct ties to. The fact that this is going to a third party caused me to take pause, but yeah, let's bring leadership in and have that conversation.
Good.
Got it.
Bill, I apologize. I didn't get a chance to read and see what they were asking, but if whatever you and Terry think, I'd go along with that. I had my eyes done yesterday about noon. I had diabetic exam and I could not see even until last night. I had 3 columns to write for the newspaper and I had to get up at 3 this morning to do it because my eyes were still
Ooh,
having trouble focusing last night. And when you can't focus to see, it's hard to write at the same time.
that's true unless you're a lawyer.
Yeah, well, they just keep
Figure it
talking.
out.
So
You're right.
whatever, if you want to wait and let me look at it. If not, I would go with whatever you and Terry think.
Good. Well, let's hear more from John Engelhoff on this because we do like to cooperate. So,
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
No problem.
Annette, we got business to do?
Yep, I need a motion to approve your minutes from September 22nd.
I'll make that motion. I think I was there.
Yep.
I will support.
Okay. We're all in
So
agreement.
Commissioner Valras moved that we approve the minutes from September 22nd with Commissioner Freeling supporting.
Right.
I will need a roll call, please. Commissioner Freeling.
Yes.
Commissioner Valras.
Yes.
Commissioner Chickering.
Yes.
Motion carries. And then the last thing, well, before we go to public comments, are those 5 resolutions from the health department. And kind of as I explained to you in the beginning, Bill, normally Nikki would come in and she'd do a presentation and you guys kind of talk about it and stuff, but the Board of Health is not meeting until tomorrow. And so at this point, we don't really have a meeting scheduled for you next week. If we need to do a meeting and then talk about these, we can, but I wanted you to have them in advance so you could at least look at them and see what you kind of felt about them. They've all gone to John Dwayne for his approval and his changes, and that's what we're moving forward with.
So if I review them with the Board of Health tomorrow morning and report back via email to this group, including you, Annette, and Brian, what I learned, can we, and I'm not thinking it would be this week, it would be, the resolutions would be for next week,
Right.
the
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
15th. That gives us more than enough time to have any additional questions and things raised and discussed with Nikki, right?
Yes. it
Yes.
does.
So Terry and Dave, you okay with that?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, it follows our process and that's good.
Good. I like to do that every now and then.
Go
Yeah, every
figure.
once in a while, we're able to do that. It's just, a matter of time. That's all.
It happens by accident, folks. Now, just an FYI, because Brian, are we meeting with Olivia the 15th?
1 second, I'm pulling up my calendar. Yeah, so the PHSC will be asked to physically come in to meet to hear an employee appeal. And that is the 15th. And I think where we left this, we were talking about having it just to follow the Board of Commissioners meeting. So we were tentatively planning it for about 12:30. Now that was just, I think that was just my idea. If you wanted to do something different, we can certainly work to accommodate that.
Well, man, that's lunch hour. I know I'm usually starving by the time Mac bangs the gavel. Now, let's see if we can get that for, say, 1:30.
Okay,
And
I'll communicate with Shelley, and then between myself and Annette, we'll take steps to consult with the employee.
Okay, and if Dave and Terry are willing to put on a mask and go do it, I'll buy them lunch that day.
Write it down. Get that in the minutes and that.
I totally missed it. I'm sorry. Did you say something about lunch? I wasn't sure.
Okay. We'll have some further communication on that topic in the next week or so. I don't think we have any other business. Any for you guys?
I have to check for public comments.
I know we're seeing if we've got anything else though, but
Oh, okay. You go ahead and then I'll check.
okay. Gary, anything from you?
No.
Dave?
I've got nothing that could extend us.
Okay. Sorry to hear about your eyesight. That's going to be tough. Hope you get somebody to follow the flight of your golf ball tomorrow.
Shine out there still bothering me. It's never been, like this before, this bad.
Hmm.
I got no issue.
Just keep taking care of it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have checked a few times here and there's 3 people watching. I think I'm one of them and I think you are good. I've checked 3 times and I don't see anything coming up.
Boy, that's 2 more people than I thought. That's great. Thank you for listening. With that, I will say we are adjourned. Annette, as always, thank you for your great leadership. And Brian, You're doing a great job, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Get help,
everybody.
Brian.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk
Yep.
talk to you all on Thursday.